All right, it looks like a few people have walked in by now, and I guess we're going to get started. Sorry that the the button keeps changing, so it goes from presentation to I guess the chat. All right, so welcome everybody to the Writing for the Web webinar here with Artsmith Media. I'm Sierra, I'm the community manager, and I'm here with Rachel, and in a minute we'll do more formal introductions, I guess. So thanks for signing up with us and joining us today. Um, Here's the introduction I was just talking about. I'm Sierra. I'm the community manager here with Artsmith. My email address is there, so feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or comments or you want to follow up with anything. Also, if you have any topics that you'd really like a webinar on, or if you just want to discuss something over coffee sometime, I'd be more than happy to. You can also reach me at Twitter. I'm on there probably more than I should be, but it's usually to check out what's going on in the Twitterverse about social media and marketing and things like that. That's kind of more of my area of focus. Today here I have Rachel with me. She's our content writer and editor, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi guys, I'm excited to kind of go through some very down-to-earth, useful writing tips for the web for you guys today. I do have a background. I have a degree in creative writing and a degree in professional writing, so I like to think I can kind of think about writing in both ways. I've taught writing for college students, and then I've also done marketing and web writing for companies like Artsmith. So I've got a little bit of the grammar guru and a little bit of the more creative side. So we're going to talk about a little bit of both of those writing concepts, and I'm excited.
Yeah. I have to say I'm really excited working with Rachel because we're both kind of the grammar Nazis that everybody talks about so much. So yeah, it's a blast whenever we get sat in a room and told to review something. You can also follow Artsmith Media on our Twitter and Facebook feeds, as well as our Pinterest boards, where we post a lot of things like infographics or suggestions on writing for the web and marketing and things like that. If you're curious to find out more about us, you can visit our website. It's artsmithmedia.com. And what should you be expecting from today? Well, this is part of a whole webinar series that we're doing that's focusing on marketing and different aspects of marketing. So we started with just overall internet marketing. We did social media a little bit ago, and today's a writing for the web. We also have blogging for business coming up next month, as well as email marketing. So you can feel free to register for those by going to artsmithmedia.com/webinars, or if you forget that, just go to our website and under our services, there's free webinar series. We are recording today and all of our webinars, so if you want to share this with a coworker or anything, just go to our services and the free webinar series, and you can see there on the right where it says resources and such, and that will link you to the recordings and any resources that we come up with. I hear a little bit ago that our intro to social media recording wasn't working. No worries, I got that up and running, and hopefully that should be working for everybody now. But if that ever happens again, just let me know, and I'll research into it. All right, now I'm going to hand it over to Rachel with her guru-ness.
All right, so this is the dirty baker's dozen here. So there's 13 common writing mistakes and how to fix them. And what I've done here is I've broken those tips into examples. So we're going to look at good and bad examples of each tip that I give you, so you can really kind of wrap your brain around each thing and see each one in action. So the first tip, and this is kind of how I like to start, because when you're writing for the web, the first thing that you want to do is set a tone for your company or your site or whatever it is. You need to have a certain voice that carries through the entire site. I really recommend using a conversational tone. You don't want to use jargon. You don't want to use a lot of acronyms that your users aren't going to understand. And of course, every business is different. You might want a more formal tone depending on the kind of business that you are. If you're a blog, you might be a little bit more conversational, a little less formal. But keep your user engaged. Use we, use you, talk to them, talk about yourselves, and just make them feel comfortable with your site. So here we have a kind of a bad example. We're going to start with bad examples and then show you good examples. This is the UNICEF homepage. UNICEF, as we all know, is a nonprofit. Nonprofits' goals usually are to get people engaged in what they're doing and also to help out, to either donate or to get involved or something. And this site doesn't really do that. It doesn't talk to us as users. It has a lot of we statements, but not a lot of you statements. So it talks about all the work that they're doing, which is great, but there's really not anywhere on here except for that one donate button that encourages us to, see that donate button there, that really encourages us to get involved in this site. This is a good example. This is one of our clients, You Loud and Clear. Kelly is the owner of this company, and this is her homepage as well, just immediately kind of pulls you in and has a conversation with you with this content. So she introduces herself, I'm Kelly, and then in the next paragraph, I hold you accountable to making your personal miracles reality. So she's automatically engaging you in a conversation with her, and that's really what her company is all about. So that tone makes sense for her site. You might not want to be quite this conversationable with your users, but it's still a good way to draw people in. All right, tip number 2, answer your users' questions through your content. When people come to a website, they're there to ask a question, they're there to find an answer to something, they want to complete an action, there's something they want to do. So anticipate what it is that they're looking for, or the question that they have, or the thing that they want to do, and answer it through your content. And don't just push this all onto a help page or an FAQ page. Make sure that each page on your site has the answers to your users' questions. So this is a good example from Hope House Foundation, which is a local nonprofit here in Hampton Roads. They've anticipated the questions that potential donors or volunteers might have about their organization. So on this What We Do page, they've taken those questions and formed their content around it. So what are developmental disabilities? What kind of support do you provide to people who have these disabilities? And so they've put that content right out there in the open so you're not digging around for it. All right, tip number 3, don't make your user scroll more than 3 to 4 times. And this is going to be an overarching theme for several of these tips, is the size of your content, the length of your content. And what I mean when I say scroll 3 or 4 times, that little rolly ball on your mouse, you can see it in that picture there with those 2 mice. If they have to scroll that little thing more than 3 times, they're going to give up on that site. So the average user gives a page 30 seconds or less before deciding to move on. So if you don't give them that information that they need quickly, succinctly, and right at the top of the page, they're just going to move on. And that doesn't mean that your page shouldn't have that much content. There's plenty of pages and websites that need a lot of content. It's really just about how you break it up. So to reduce the amount of scrolling that a user does on your site, you might try using anchors, which are links that drop down to additional information at the bottom of the page. You might want to break up content with headers or bullet points, and we'll talk about all those more in depth, but just keep those pages as short and brief as you possibly can. So the bad example, this is a page from the United States Postal Service, and it's their services page, which is probably a fairly visited page on their site. But rather than creating anchors for each service they provide, they've just listed them all. So you have no way of at the very top of the page just clicking to the thing that you want. You actually have to scroll all the way down this page. And it keeps going. That was really just about half of the page. So that's very frustrating, and probably you're just going to give up and go into the post office, and that's not their goal. They want you to do those services on the web to keep business, to keep that line down basically in their office. By contrast, this is a page off the Artsmith Media website. This is our Google Grants page. We have a lot to say about Google Grants. We do a lot of work with them, but we've kept that page to a minimum. So we've got a nice big heading there that draws you in, a good image that corresponds to the content, a couple little bolded words just to kind of draw your eye to important parts of this. And then down at the bottom, you see that Get Started link, and that's going to take you to a page with more content. So if you're really interested in this and you need that extra content, you can go to that page. Otherwise, you can just read this very briefly. You can see whether or not it applies to you, and you can move on. All right, so I said this is going to be a theme. Keeping things short is a theme. So keep your pages short, and now keep your paragraphs short. Paragraphs do not follow the same rules on the web as they do in regular writing. I'm sure we all learned in English 101 or back in high school that paragraphs need an introductory sentence and then supporting evidence and then a closing sentence. Not how it works on the web. Each paragraph on the web should contain one coherent thought. That means they can be as short as one sentence. You don't have to have these long, fluffy paragraphs. You're not writing an essay. So you can see in that little graphic there a big block paragraph of text, and then that probably the same amount of content broken up into shorter paragraphs. Doesn't mean that you have to make your content any shorter or your paragraph any shorter. It just is how it's broken up. It's just visually more digestible on the web. So this is a bad example from a page on a train history website. They've got a great image there, and you get interested and you want to read it, but you see those huge chunks of text and you just can't really think about sitting there and reading all of it. So we don't read the same way on the web that we read when we open the newspaper or when we open a book or a magazine, or even when we're reading a blog, we're more apt to read longer paragraphs. But if you're on a web page, you want things that are really short and to the point. So when you see a hunk of text like that, you're probably not going to stick around for too long. All right, and a good example, again from Hope House Foundation, their Who We Are page has several short paragraphs that describe what it is that they do. Each paragraph is one sentence, but each sentence describes something that they do. So we are people with developmental disabilities. We are an organization of more than 250 full and part-time employees. So each thing speaks to you directly, and it has a point, and then it moves on. And of course, you can see that all of those paragraphs are visible on one page. You don't have to do any scrolling. All right, use headings to help organize content on a page. So we've talked about keeping those paragraphs short. A lot of times you want to introduce those paragraphs with headings. Headings are going to briefly explain what the following paragraph or paragraphs are about. And they should help the reader just kind of skim down, find the thing that they're looking for, and move on. You want to make sure that your headers are clear about what they're referring to. So if you have a floating header where there's equal distance above and below it to content above and below it, it can sometimes be confusing which paragraph that header is referring to. So just make sure that your headers stay closest to the content that they're referring to. And use an inverted pyramid style. We'll talk a little bit more about this at the end, but basically you want to give your main point, the most important information first, and then move down from there. So a good example, this is from a client's site, the National Osteoporosis Foundation. This is their women's risk page. They use headers really well here to break up information so that you can really quickly get to what you're looking for. So good news, what's your risk? And then those anchors, that blue text where it says, are you Caucasian, African American, Asian American? Those are all anchors, and they drop you down to paragraphs of text that are important to you because you might not need the other information. So it quickly gets you to what you need. Okay, so we've kept our pages short, we've kept our paragraphs short, now we're keeping our sentences short. Fragments are okay on the web, especially when we're doing headers like we were just talking about. Those things don't need to be full, complete sentences with your punctuation at the end. Cut the fluff, get to the point of what you're trying to say, and just don't waste your user's time, basically. So I took a sentence from the EPA's website just to kind of give you an example here. We'll read along to the before sentence. The EPA's Office of Solid Waste and Emergency Response established the principles for greener cleanups as a foundation for improving the decision-making process involved with contaminated site cleanup in a way that assures protection of human health and the environment and minimizes the environmental footprint of cleanup activities. If anybody remembers what the beginning of that sentence is about by the end of it, I applaud you, but most people can't. That's way, way too long for the web. So I cleaned it up a little and made it a little shorter. This is my version. To minimize the environmental footprint of cleanup activities, the EPA's Office of Solid Waste and Emergency Response created the principles for greener cleanups with a goal to improve the cleanup process to protect human health and the environment. It's still a long sentence. There's a lot of information there, and probably it could be broken up into more than one sentence, but it does get to the point a little quicker. We've created this guideline for the purpose of improving the cleanup process. That's all people really need to know. Fragments are okay. This is a blog from our website. We've used fragments here to introduce each paragraph. Well, Sierra actually wrote this one, so she's created fragments to introduce each paragraph. So create a scrap paper pile, use glasses instead of disposable cups. They're fragments, they're not complete sentences, and it doesn't matter for this purpose, for this blog. It just kind of helps you move through this, through the content quickly and introduces each paragraph well. Okay, use your homepage as a map. When you go to a website, when people go to a website, when they land on that homepage, they're not really looking to read a lot of content. Most people come to a homepage and they anticipate that they're going to then navigate to what they need. So what they're looking for is for that homepage to really tell them where to go. So use your homepage as a map, keep the text to a minimum, and let your menus and your navigation do the work for you. So here's our really unfortunate bad example. This is a homepage of the vetshelp.org website. It is really, really busy, as you can see from this kind of far view, but if you get in here close, you may or may not even realize that that tan bar at the top where it says Home, Team, Patriot, and other programs, news reports, those are actually menu items. There's 16 different menu items on this page. So first of all, visually, it's not very clear that those are menu items. They're not blue, they're not underlined, they're not in tabs. They kind of all run together. But also there's just so many. And then this page, this homepage, we don't really understand what these graphics at the top are about. And then the content on the page just keeps going and going and going. And there's just no way that anyone's ever going to get down here to the very bottom of the page that has some really compelling content and images. So just make sure that you keep your navigation clean and simple. You don't put a lot of content on your homepage, and use compelling images or graphics when necessary, but don't stick them way down at the bottom where no one's going to see them. By contrast, this is another one of our clients, the Alliance for Global Education. They literally use a map for their homepage. So they do study abroad programs. So what they've done here is they've made this page, their homepage, kind of show the different areas that they work in. So you can literally just click on that map to see information about the area that you might be interested in. But then they also have a top navigation bar and navigation on the left-hand side. It's very clean. It's basic. It gets you to what you're looking for. But visually, this page is very appealing, and you can kind of navigate very quickly. Okay, so use bullet points and lists to organize information. Again, we talked about this at the beginning when we were saying, break up that content so it's not huge hunks of text. So bullet points are a great way to do that. They're an easy way for people to scan information. The thing to keep in mind with bullet points is that there's a rule of 7. People can't remember more than 7 things generally. So try to keep your bullet point list to 7 or less. Any longer than that, and users kind of get fatigued again. Each bullet point, just like a sentence on the web, should be its own concise thought. You don't need a lot of content per bullet point. So here's our bad example. This is from a website called SML. We still have not really been able to figure out what this organization does. It's such an unclear site. But this is their homepage, and they just have all these bullet points on the front. And you know that no one is scrolling all the way down to read all of those bullet points. What they've done is listed all of their partners here. This information, I'm sure, could be on the site somewhere and could be well done, maybe with some links to those different sites. But unfortunately, they've just stuck them all right here on the homepage with bullet point after bullet point after bullet point. A good example, this is our site again. This is our services page. We have a lot of services. We do a lot of things here. This page could be the equivalent of 10 printed pages if we wanted it to be. But what we've done here is we've broken it up into headers, into the 4 main things that we do, and then the bullet points underneath that get more specific about the different services. So if you want to find out more, you just click on that link at the bottom, and you can go to more information about each service. Okay, left justify all text. Center text is really hard to read, so is right justified text. It's just for visual reasons, but also just because it's a standard. It's how we read in books and magazines, and that's just how text appears to us. But for some reason, when people get on the web and they have that option to format text, they want to center things. You can see in those boxes down at the bottom with the Lorem Ipsum text, just visually, even without really even reading through those, which you can't because it's all in Latin, but you can see how much easier it is to read that left justified paragraph versus the other two. It's particularly important when you've got pages that have longer paragraphs of text or content. It can be really fatiguing to read center text for a long time. So again, this is the Vets Help website. This is another unfortunately bad example. This is further down on their homepage, I believe. And you can see here the center text, it just looks unprofessional. You don't really take it very seriously. And it looks awkward above that left justified text. And who knows why they chose to have one centered and one left justified. And who knows why it's in red, but it is. So that's the situation. This is the good example from Sympathy Foods site, which is another one of our clients. There's a lot of content on this page, but it's broken up really well and it's formatted really well. So everything's got headers, everything's left justified, the paragraphs are not too long. So it just keeps it really professional, really clean, and really easy to read. Okay, this is my favorite. Do not use all caps. Using all caps indicates that you're yelling at your user. We've all seen this. You've seen it on Facebook or blogs or forums or somewhere, and it just kind of makes your blood boil a little bit, right? Don't do it. This is a great example of all caps. So I don't know if any of you have been in the military or worked with the military. I used to work for the Navy on a naval base. Every official communication that the Navy puts out comes in all caps, and it has to do with the machinery that they used to use to send out information, but you know, that's all gone and done now. They use computers like the rest of us, and yet they continue to send out things in all caps. So this little article about them dropping the all caps is just kind of a little tongue-in-cheek. They've actually written the article in all caps. But you can see how difficult it is to read, and it's also sort of a generational thing. People in Sarah and my age group and the millennial age group, because this has become such a thing on the web, we automatically interpret this as yelling. Maybe someone of a different generation might not, but because anybody might interpret this as yelling, you really have to keep it off your site unless it's absolutely necessary for some reason. I'm not sure what that reason would be. But it's hard to read, but it sounds like yelling, but the most important thing is it's really hard to read. All caps are really hard for the eye to scan over. Okay, do not underline anything that isn't an active link. I'm sure you have seen this before on the web, on a site, something is underlined, you go to click on it, and it doesn't take you anywhere. It's very, very confusing. This is a web design standard. If things are in blue, if things are underlined, they are a link. So if they're not a link, don't do those things to them. The other thing that is you have to think about when you're talking about hypertext and underlining things that are links, you don't want too many of them on a page because it can really start to get busy and unprofessional looking. And this is a perfect example of that. The Transparency International page, there's really not any content that explains any of these links to you, but the entire page are hyperlinks. And you don't really get any context for where they might go or what they might be about. And it just doesn't seem legitimate. You don't really want to click on any of these links. Plus it's busy and it doesn't look good. Okay, by comparison, this is AE Clarity. They're an architectural and engineering consulting firm. And so they have he does training for finance people within architectural and engineering firms. So he's got a lot of external links and things that he wants to, send you out to, different resources. So he's going to have a lot of links on his site, but he's done it well. So under his resources page, he has different guides that you can go and look at. The hypertext there is at the bottom. It's blue. It's underlined. It's easy to see. He's got his upcoming trainings on the right-hand side. Again, you know that you can click on that, and it's going to take you to more information about the training, but it's not overwhelming. And you want to make sure that those links are actually relevant to the content on the page. Okay. Use bold to highlight keywords. I showed you one of Sierra's blogs where she had done this, and she had bolded just a couple of words that kind of drew your eye to them and made a point within the paragraph. And that's great. It's excellent. It's a good way to help people sort of scan through content. But if you overuse it, you'll run into a case of crying wolf about what is and is not important on your site. So if everything is bolded, no one's going to know what is and isn't important. This is a hunk of legal text, and this is really just to show you how difficult it can be to read text where lots of things are bolded. So your eye just sort of jumps around this paragraph. You're not really sure where to stop or start. So just kind of stray away from using it this much on the web, or really anywhere. Just, yeah, anywhere. This is a good example from the Food Routes Network website. The main point of each paragraph is this little heading in the red text, and it's bolded. And so it just sort of helps you scan down these paragraphs. It sums up the paragraph, so you don't, if you don't have a lot of time, you can just sort of read those bolded sections and move on. Use relevant images. Images can really help your site a lot. It creates interest. It can make it look better. It can make your content more clear. But just make sure that your images are not taking the place of good content, and make sure that your images are relevant to your content, that they add rather than detracting from what you're trying to tell your user. And importantly, make sure your images are legal. So make sure that you either own the photo or that it's under some sort of Creative Commons license that allows you to use it, or that you've given the source for where you got it if it's not yours. So we've all seen these. If you're on Facebook, you've seen this. It's the little ads that sit in the right-hand sidebar. And so frequently, that picture next to that ad makes absolutely no sense. They have nothing to do with each other. And when that happens, when you see a picture that's not related to the content, it creates distrust. You don't believe that ad, you don't believe that picture, you're not going to click on it. So make sure that your images have anything at all to do with what you're actually writing about. This is a good example from a kind of a documentary and media website. They've used images to kind of sum up whether it's a documentary or an article or an interview. They've given a relevant image with the title of the article below it, and those images link to those stories. So, for me personally, this is a very compelling site. Those images are compelling. They make me want to click on these things and read these stories or watch these videos, and they help the content rather than drawing away from the content. Okay, so in conclusion, just keep in mind, writing for the web is very different from other forms of writing. The same rules do not apply that you learned in English 101 or Comp 101. Make sure that you're brief, get to the point, and answer your users' questions. We would all like to think that our users are sitting on our websites for hours and reading everything we've written and looking at every picture and clicking on every link, and it's not what's happening. They're giving sites a few minutes if you're lucky. So just make sure that you give them the information they're looking for quickly. Do this by organizing your information with headers, break up your paragraphs, use bullet points in bold when necessary, use images that help your content, that will draw people in, and stick to the inverted pyramid style, which I talked about a little bit earlier. So you want to make sure that the most relevant information is first, and then additional information that hopefully they read, but maybe they won't. And then at the very bottom of your paragraph, the information that it'd be great if they read it, but if they don't, they're not going to lose out and you haven't lost them. And if you're still not sure whether or not your site is following these rules, just take a look at the Burlington National UFO Center website. This is what not to do in a nutshell. If you ever have any questions or you doubt yourself, just visit the site. If it's on this site, don't do it. And that's pretty much it. So I will turn this back over to Sierra, and if anybody has any questions, I don't know, will we unmute them or do they just type in the box?
Oh no, if you guys have any questions, feel free to type in the chat section there. I haven't seen any questions come up, but let's see. What are some of are there any other fun tips that you want to throw out there?
Oh, you put me on the spot.
Sorry.
Off the top of my head, those are really the most important ones. I guess one thing I will say really quickly is that Artsmith does offer content editing and writing services. Mm-hmm. So if you're happy with your website and you don't really want like a huge overhaul of your entire site, but you think that maybe your content is not working as well as it could, we offer those services also. So it's not just full web design overhauls. And we can do content audits. Sierra and I do that all the time for clients, where we just take a look at their site and give them some brief suggestions on what would make it better. So feel free to contact us, reach out to us, and ask us about that as well. Because, tips beyond what's in this presentation are really going to be specific to the content that you're working with on your site. Because everyone's site is different. These are just sort of the general, hit the main point type of things.
What are your standing on exclamation points? When should I be using them on the web?
So I had a professor in grad school who said if anyone ever used an exclamation point in her class, we would automatically fail. So based on that, I don't have a lot of love for the exclamation point. And what this professor was trying to say was basically your sentence should express excitement, not your punctuation, which is a great point. Exclamation points do have their place. I mean, we've got one here on the slide. I'm not gonna knock them. But that's an appropriate place for an exclamation point. An inappropriate place for an exclamation point would be at the end of every sentence in multiples. So just stay away from that when possible.
Especially with bold text.
Yeah, with bold text in all caps. Yeah, just steer clear of that.
Yeah. All right. Well, it seems like Rachel must have answered all of your questions because I don't see any popping up in the chat, which is good, I would assume. If not, you can always go to our website, contact us. You can email us or whatnot. We provided those with the earlier slides. But in the meantime, we will be taking this recording and we'll be taking a list of resources like books that Rachel suggests or maybe just an overview of these tips and things like that. We'll be providing that on a resource page, and all of those who have attended or those who signed up, you guys will be getting an email with that information here shortly. We'll also be posting about it on our social media platforms. So again, feel free to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your lunch hour and you all have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.
Bye.